Hey there, and welcome to my channel. I'm Crafty Kathy. I'm the owner and creator of Kit's Vintage Farmhouse in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm so happy and thankful that you stopped in to craft and spend a little time with me today. This week, I decided to touch on a genre that I have never done before. It is fall, although it could hinge on Halloween, but it's moody and dark academia. Now let me know how you think that I did and if you want to see more of these. And let's get into it. For DIY number 1, we're going to create a beautiful picture for the wall. Obviously, this came from Kirkland's originally. I got it at the thrift store. I'm just going to go ahead and take everything out of this frame. I'm also going to be using these molds. These are from IOD and it's called Dainty Flourishes. I created these before I started my video. Here I'm just trying to figure out in my mind how I want these molds to go on the frame. I'm going to use Titebond Quick and Thick, and all of the dark academia and moody things that I've seen has these gorgeous picture frames that are very ornate, very old looking, and just really pretty. So as you can tell, this one is a little plain around the edges, and I just wanted to add these molds because that is the easiest way to create like a gorgeous frame. You can use these molds and just turn a frame into something that it never was before and make it gorgeous. I'm just going to put my Quick and Thick on here, and these are still pliable because like I said, I just made these and I made them with the amazing casting resin. I get it off of Amazon and it's in my Amazon store in case you want to try some of it. I really like to use that resin above all the others because in 10 minutes it's ready to go on your project, and most of the resins are overnight, sometimes longer than that. I'm just going to use this knife and cut off the little rounded portion, that little squiggly part there, because I felt like it looked better without it. And that's why I love using these molds, because when they're still pliable like this, they're very easy to cut and maneuver and shape into the way that you want them to go. I'm going to go around and do the exact same thing on the top with the other one. It really doesn't take much of the glue. It is a wood glue. However, all of us creators use the Titebond Quick and Thick because it is just so perfect at holding these molds exactly where they're supposed to go. I just put it on and then kind of rub it in with my finger and place it where I want it. I always hold mine down with a little bit of masking tape because I find that this is the easiest way to keep these molds from sliding. And I think I only left these to kind of harden for about 4 hours, and it was ready for me to go to the next step. And I totally forgot to mention, if you do want to try out some of these molds and use them on your own picture frames and stuff, you can get them at Milton's Daughter. I'll leave her information down below so that she's very easy to find, and I'll leave her information in the comments section too. I guess out of all the stuff that IOD sells, the molds are probably my personal favorite, simply because you can take just a plain Jane picture frame or something like this and turn it into something that's very elegant looking. Here I'm just going to add on each of the 4 corners this rounded piece. I just felt that it was it just gave it like a elegant vibe. And with all of the pieces that I am putting down, I always just use a little bit of that masking tape so it don't slip and slide, and it gives it enough time to dry and hold on. And once it's on there and it's not going anywhere. I'm just going to add this last little corner on the bottom, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the top part as I do on the bottom part. But I wanted to stop for just a moment and welcome you to my channel. Whatever brought you here today, I am so glad that you're here. And especially if this is the first time that you've ever been to my channel, I would love for you to go down to the comment section and introduce yourself. I love to connect with you guys down there and have conversations. And I also want to invite you to subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you, and we always have room for more. We always just chat and craft and have a good old time. As you see here, I'm just finishing up with my last little corner. I did the exact same thing on the top of the frame as I did on the bottom. So at this point is where I was telling you I just went ahead and taped everything off and left it alone for about 4 hours until I hit the next step. But I'm going to move on and show you guys the canvas. I got this off of Temu. It's about a 12 by 16, I think, and I don't know what I was thinking. Instead of measuring the back to see how big I needed it, I just assumed that I needed to cut off an inch from the top and an inch off of the bottom. And I ended up cutting it about half an inch too short. So anyways, what I'm doing here is just going down and making sure that I've got an inch across. I cut that piece off and then moved on to the next step. For the backing of my picture, I'm going to use that hard cardboard that came on the sign, and I took it outside and I spray painted it black. Well, I spray painted the bottom and the top black because I knew that those would be the parts that might be showing. And guys, as expensive as stuff is nowadays, I try to pinch pennies anywhere I can. And there was no point in me spray painting the whole thing black when I'm just going to cover it up. So the bottom and the top that may possibly be showing, I did spray paint those black. Here I'm using my 80-year-old Mod Podge that had like, you know how the Mod Podge gets gross and gets like thick pieces in it? Well, it had that. I wanted to use the matte, and that's what I'm going to do, and just place it all over my board, and that way that's what we're going to use to hold our picture down. If you ever get any of these canvas prints from Temu, I feel like the best thing to hold them down is either some Mod Podge or that Aleene's tacky glue that you can get from the Dollar Tree. Now, both of those are really thick. You're not going to be able to use something that's thin. You do want it kind of thick and goopy for this so that it will hold on to that canvas. And I mean, it needs to be thick. So what I did was lay my picture down. I start off from the center and just kind of start smoothing it out with my hands. And you see up at the top, I just kept adding the Mod Podge because I knew that around the edges, you need to put a good amount so that it will have a really good stick. And I also use my brayer, and eventually it does hold on to it and sticks on there. But the best way that I have found to get these pictures to stick is once you get your Mod Podge on there and you use your brayer and your hands, then I flip mine over on a flat surface and I put like a bunch of heavy books or something on it, and I leave it alone for a couple of hours to dry, and the weight from those books is going to allow that Mod Podge to dry and hold on to that thick canvas picture. I left it alone overnight to dry, and the next day I put it back in our frame. I did take the glass out, by the way, because number one, the glass always creates a terrible glare when I'm trying to film, and also because I found that most people don't even like putting their glass in there, and I'm definitely one of those people that is like anti-glass anymore. I just like my frames and my pictures to look this way and not have that old pesky glass on the outside. So I just went through and made sure that everything was stuck down really good, and I'm taking my tape off. Now it's time to paint our frame and make everything look cohesive as though it were one piece, and that like it was made this way with all of these beautiful molds on it. I'm going to use the DIY paint called Black Velvet, and I get this from Lori over at Milton's Daughter. And remember, I leave all her information down below in case you want some of the DIY paint. What I'm going to do is just use a nice little brush that I can just kind of dab and get in all of those crooks and crevices of the molds. And I just went around and gave everything about 2 coats because I felt to make sure that everything was nice and covered that it needed 2 coats. Now when I first started painting, if you can see, the very outer side of the frame has like gold. And I know it's kind of hard to see, but it was gold and it kind of had like little black specks in it. And I really liked the way that that looked. And at first I was going to keep that. But as the project progressed and I realized it was not going to look right, I just went ahead and painted the whole frame in its entirety black. Now there may be little areas like on that most inner corner there where you can still see a little bit of gold peeking through, but that's okay because the dark academia has a lot of gold tones in it, and so I was planning on using gold to go over this anyways, so it's totally fine with me if it had a little bit peeking through here and there. I ended up deciding to use my antique gold colored rubbing buff. Now the reason being, you guys know that I love that Pent Art antique paste, but it is a little bit more of a bright gold. And I feel that for fall and like Halloween time, I really like the color that the antique gold gives from Rubbin' Buff. Now, I have gotten this Rubbin' Buff off of Amazon. This little tube that you actually see here, I have had for 3 years. And I've used it a lot. I mean, it takes very little bit of this stuff to get the effect that you want. And what I always like to say is just start off small, and if you like it and you want to add more, you can build on there. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I like to put it on with my finger. I think that gives me better control, and I can get it exactly where and how much that I want. And the most beautiful thing about these IOD molds is when you go over them with something like this Rubbin' Buff or like an antique paste or something, it brings out the most beautiful details that you cannot even describe what your eye is seeing. It's just so beautiful. So here you see me just going around and adding a little bit. And with the dark academia, I didn't want to go too wild with it and put a whole bunch of gold. I just wanted a slight bit for the accents. And I definitely went around that inner corner there to show the divots that were on this frame before I ever did anything to it. I love the way that antique gold just kind of goes with that black, and it looks so pretty. And I liked the way that it looked on that inner frame especially, so I added just a little bit more to give it just a little bit more of a pop all the way around. I ended up taking my paintbrush that I had painted with the black velvet and just kind of going around and almost like dry brushing, just kind of here and there, dabbing it around that outer edge because I wanted to mimic the way that it originally was, where it was gold and had that little bit of black peeking out. And that's also a good way if you feel like you've went too crazy with the Rubbin' Buff or your antique paste. If you want to just kind of calm it down a little bit, you just kind of dab it with that original color, where in my case it's the black. Now the very last thing that I did to this picture is take a teeny tiny like detail brush, put a little bit of the Rubbin' Buff on it, and you see his bow tie. I just wanted to highlight it. I noticed it had a little bitty bit of gold anyway, and I thought, wow, if I just kind of highlight this a little bit, it'll just kind of bring the picture all together. And I absolutely love the way that this looked. Now, guys, I am not an artist by any means. I cannot draw. I can't even draw a stick figure. But if you just kind of look and see the colors that it has, and then, of course, we added that gold, and I just wanted to add just a little bitty bit more to kind of bring out what was already there. Almost just kind of like to highlight it. I ended up highlighting like the front portion of his hat, And I did a little bit in the back, but I didn't like the way that looked. So I just took a baby wipe and kind of rubbed that back off and just kind of went down the collar of his shirt. And I think that made such a difference. It's a very subtle difference, but wow, it made such a great effect. And I hope that you like this one. Let me know what you think. The second DIY is really quick and simple. Now, I got a bunch of different tissue paper and decopauge paper from my friend Brandy. She actually creates this. She has a channel called the DIY Struggle, and she sells these. I'll leave her link down below. It is an amazing price, and she makes like smaller ones and larger ones. I really feel like this one is a great look for dark academia for fall, the one with the mushrooms, but I just quickly wanted to show you some of the different ones she sent me. You can make like a lot of great small projects with these, or you can use some of the bigger pieces for larger ones. Now, I am no expert by any means on the dark academia and the moody, but I've noticed that like the moody is kind of like really dark fall colors, like a beautiful dark orange, or maybe like a garnet color, like a really dark maroonish color, dark blues. And they say that the dark in dark academia isn't dark as in colors being dark. However, that is kind of like the scheme of the colors. But they say the dark is kind of like macabre, kind of like, murder mystery, kind of, like the dark side of things. And then the academia is, of course, like the academics, things like that. And so I just wanted to make something that's more on the fall side here, but is also going to be a dark academia. We're going to go with these black candles that I got from Temu, and I love this print that has the mushrooms on it. So what I'm going to do, I first started off cutting it, and then I was like, what am I doing? I always preach to you guys that it looks so much better if you have torn ends. It does not look good when you have like an absolute straight cut. So I'm just going to go through these. What I do is wet the end of a paintbrush and just kind of go along where I want to tear it, and I tear off the pieces that I need. I'm going to use my good old trusty Elmer School Glue glue stick thing here. And all I'm going to do is go around and put this down on my candle, and I'm literally going to place my picture down on it. I'm going to start off in the middle and just smooth it with my fingers. Normally, I say when you're decoupaging anything to use a white background, whereas it would be a white candle, but I got these black ones from Temu, and I thought, why not? Let's give it a try and let's use it. If you use a white background, it just kind of makes your paper kind of pop more. However, we're doing dark academia, so we don't necessarily need it to pop more. Now, one of my subscribers just a week or two ago was asking me, can you do something with candles? This is a very easy way to bring whatever your style is into your home for fall. You may not be into this dark academia. You may not even be into Halloween, but you can do this exact same thing with either a real candle or the battery operated here like I use. You just pick out whatever decoupage paper you want, use your glue stick, and put it on there. Now, when I'm doing these, I normally use the glue stick that is not a permanent glue stick. That way, when I want to change it up for the next season, that's exactly what I'll do. This set of candles that I purchased from Temu actually had 5 in there, but I didn't want to use all of them for this one project. And I did find it much easier, guys, when I took my glue stick and put it on the back of my decopauge paper here and then place it on instead of placing my glue stick on the candle and then putting my paper on. And I just used my little hand sander, my little finger sander there to get the excess off. I was dying to put one of these with the words going sideways, but I just knew that somebody was going to be like, you put one on there with the words sideways. So I was like, dang it, and I didn't do that. But I thought that it would look really good, and it doesn't bother me that these don't reach all the way around my candle, because the only part you're ever going to see is that front part. And I change my candles like I change my underwear, honey. I change these things probably 5 or 6 different times per season. Well, okay, I have to be honest. I do change my drawers more often than that. But you know what I'm saying. I change my candles a lot, okay? Let's just leave it at that. And I hope you like this simple idea. This third DIY is probably my personal favorite of this whole video. I found this pumpkin a couple years ago at the thrift store, and this is when Farmhouse was in, and it didn't really fit. Well, now that, you know, Dark Academia and Moody is kind of the thing, this goes with it perfectly. It did kind of have some scraggly pieces here and there, but I either tried to put them back the way that they were supposed to go, or I would just take them off altogether. I even really hate to call this a DIY, because all it took was a little bit of tweaking to bring this pumpkin into Dark Academia. I was telling you the color scheme for Dark Academia is like dark reds, yellows. So I thought, let's darken up these yellow leaves a little bit. I'm using my distress ink, and it is like a stain, except for it squirts. And so I put it on here, and at first I thought, ooh, because it just it looked like splattered like blood or something almost. And then I thought, well, it's a stain. Let's use the paintbrush and just kind of rub it in and kind of see what we've got here. But guys, it was like one of those happy accidents. I absolutely loved the way it turned out. All I was wanting to do was kind of darken up that yellow color on the leaves. And then I started brushing, you know, all of the little twigs, and realized that they needed to be dark for it to be Dark Academia. Because a lot of the Dark Academia, you see those dark wood floors in like somebody's library. And it's that really dark wood. And I thought, so let's make our pumpkin really dark. I grabbed my distress ink and I squirted it, and I was like, oh, wow, I really like this. So I just kind of added here and there wherever I thought that it needed it, but it made such a difference. I don't know if you can tell from the video here how much of a difference it made, but it really did. Now, at this point, I was really liking what I saw, and I went hog wild with it. I started spraying this stuff everywhere, and I'm just going to be honest with you. This distress ink is very messy. That's why I've got the wax paper down. I had already made a mess on my table, and then I thought, okay, I want to kind of freeze it the way it is instead of it stay wet forever and take a long time to dry. So I just grabbed my heat brush, or my heat gun, and I just dried it as it was, and it made these leaves so beautiful. I couldn't have been more happy with the color that came out of this. And I just kind of used my paintbrush, and a lot of times, guys, when we're making these projects, you just got to wait on it. Just wait till the end outcome. Don't give up too early, because I could have gave up and been like, oh my Lord, when I first sprayed that on there, but I didn't give up. I was like, let's just see what happens. Now, I made a few little boo-boos along the way. Like here, I was using my antique gold rubbing buff, and I added a little bit too much to the leaf. So what I did was just took the wet baby wipe and wiped it right back off, and just kind of went around anywhere where I felt needed a little touch of gold. And it did have like one little black tendril, they call it, the little squigglies that come off the pumpkins. It had a black one on it, and I put just a little bit of that antique gold rub and buff on my fingers and kind of ran it up and down that little tendril thing, and it just was so pretty. And like I said, I just kind of added a little bit here and there, but I loved the way that this came out in the end here. I made a project, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and it's when I was doing the cutting boards, the bamboo cutting boards from Dollar Tree, and was doing different things. Well, one of those had fallen over in my craft studio and like broke. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to waste those molds that are on there. I had these beautiful leaf molds on there, and they came off of one of my IOD molds. So I thought, let's just use these and add these onto our pumpkin to give it a little bit of something, you know. So I was going over these with just the stain that was left over on my brush, and I really liked the way that it looked. Then I grabbed that antique gold rubbing buff again and put just a little bit on my finger. And I had already placed a bronze color on this with my bronze antique paste. And I didn't really want bronze. I wanted the gold. And I thought, wow, I put way too much on this one little leaf. So I just went right back over it with that brown that was on my brush just to kind of muddle it down and make it kind of the color that I wanted it to be. So then I decided, let's just go back over it again and start from the first kind of. And I grabbed my color called Layered Chocolate. It's a DIY paint, and I get this from Lori at Milton's Daughter. And I thought, instead of going over it with the stain, we needed a little bit more coverage, and that's why I pulled out the Layered Chocolate. That is the original color that I had on this leaf, and I loved the way that it looked up against that gold rubbing buff. And so I just went over all three of my little pieces here and just kind of added a little bit of that Layered Chocolate here and there to kind of darken it up just a little bit and make it more moody. I also decided, since I had a little bit of that Layered Chocolate on my brush, just to go through and kind of tap, tap, tap here and there on my leaves and just add a little bit there too. I also had this pine cone, and I think I painted this pine cone like an orange color last year, and I wanted to dirty it up a little bit and make it go more with the dark academia and the moody vibe. And so I just went through with that Layered Chocolate and just kind of ran it through it really quick. Instead of using my Titebond Quick and Thick, I decided just to use my glue gun for video purposes and go ahead and just put that on the back of my little leaves and add them here and there on the top of my pumpkin, just wherever I thought they would look good. I'm going to set this pumpkin on top of some books because academics, books. So I am kind of have a point there. You know, I'm trying to go to one, look that's in my mind. Now, I got these at an old antique store down in Destin, Florida. I absolutely love the store. I can't remember the name of it, but I go every year. And this thing was from like the 1840s. So it had ads in it for like old bicycles and girdles and just all this great stuff that I absolutely love. And I thought, now this is the look that you would see when you're trying to create like a dark academia setting on a table somewhere. I liked that dark maroon color of that book. We don't want any jackets on books. So I took the jacket off, and as you see, this book looks like it's never been touched. So I thought, oh my goodness, I have to dirty this book up a little bit. And I just took a little bit of my antique wax. I added some of it to my little dauber here and just kind of ran it all around the book. I ran it down the sides because the part that you're going to see is the pages, because that's how I like to have my books displayed, where you can see the pages instead of looking at the spine. And so I just kind of ran through it and muddied these pages up a little bit. I know that it doesn't exactly look like it's been used and that it's old, but it gave the appearance of what I was going for. So I went all over the book, and I did that with that antique wax. And mind you, I always tell you guys, my antique wax is really, really watered down. I probably have, 80% water and just 20% of actual wax here. So I just went all around my book, kind of added it here and there, and then I took a baby wipe and just kind of rubbed it in so it would be a little bit more believable. Now, this book is going to be kind of in the middle of the stack. You're not really going to see it. It's going to be more of an afterthought, I guess you could say. But I just wanted all my books to kind of look cohesive when I have my beautiful little pumpkin sitting on them. Then my last book here that I'm going to use is a Spanish book from, it looks like either elementary or maybe middle school. Now the color here is already on point. It's a dark brown color, but whoever Cole Taylor is, he wrote his name all over this book. And when you're looking at dark academia and the pictures of it, you don't usually see books where people have just mutilated them and wrote all over them, but it kind of went with the vibe, so I rolled with it. Now this very last one is short and sweet. I'm going to use some of these Apothecary labels that Brandy has placed in one of these larger pieces of decopauge paper, and they're already pre-done. All you have to do pretty much is just cut them out and use them. Now I am going to cut these out because of the shape of the Apothecary labels. I want to keep that shape going, and so what I did was just cut both of these out really quickly, and we're going to place these on the front of some old Apothecary jars that I have. I got this jar set back at Hobby Lobby a few years ago, and I absolutely loved it. And I used this last year in a different DIY, and it has 4 bottles. And for the life of me, I could not find the other 2 bottles. I don't know what I did with them, but I already had like some dried herbs and stuff like that in here, so I had to do very little to this, and I hate to even call this a DIY. So all I'm going to do is take my little Apothecary labels and place them on the front of both of these. And once again, I'm using my little glue stick that's not permanent because I want to be able to peel these off and use them, or change them up or whatever I want to do with them. I actually still had a little bit of the remnants of last year's Apothecary labels on there. So I just took a baby wipe and it came off very easily. So I placed my second one on there, and the thing that they go in was already perfect the way that it was. And I started off using this Tim Holtz Distress ink, and I thought that this brownish color would look really good to just kind of dirty these up, muddy them up a little bit, and make them look old, like they belong to an old witch in her, in her kitchen. It's part of her brew. I don't remember the name, the color that I'm using here. It's that brownish color, and I just kind of ran it across the front of this, and then I would use my little dauber to rub it in, and because I wanted some spots to have darker, it looked like something had been spilled on it, basically, is kind of what I was going for. And then I grabbed that Distress ink that I can just spray on, and I sprayed a little bit on there, and I liked the way that looked, because that really looked like something had splattered up against it. And I just kind of rubbed it in here and there. and added where I thought that it would look good. I even did this to the very top part, the little corks that go in there, and it was honestly very believable looking. I did the same thing to the second one, and I was really impressed by that spray distress ink because I just think it just kind of tied it all together. If you stuck with me through all of today's video, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Even if dark academia and moody is not really your vibe, I am so thankful that you stayed to watch all of it. Let me know how you think I did on this video, if I totally missed the mark or if you think I did good, and if you want to see more. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would love for you to hit that little red subscribe button and become a part of our family. I definitely want you to be a part of this crazy journey that I'm on, and we can help out each other. And if you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button. That really helps me out a lot on YouTube, and don't forget to leave me a comment. Now, my videos are every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and I'll see you back here real soon, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Did you know that if you're on an iPhone or a tablet that you can tap on my face right here and become a subscriber of my channel? You sure can, and I would love for you to do so. You can also tap on one of these videos that has similar content, and it'll take you right there in just a moment. God bless you and your families.